G'day, I'm Grizz, and don't worry, I won't be talking for too much longer over this fantastic Gran Turismo 7 VR footage. That said, embargo stipulations say that I should definitely introduce it at the very least, as this video is a version 2 update to my full talky PlayStation VR2 headset review, which is just going to continue as it was after these gameplay chunks. For now though, let's just can the commentary and get you into a VR experience that is no doubt a high selling point for those of you considering a purchase of this headset. If you're after my opinion, GT7 in VR is bloody amazing. But hey, why should I tell you when I can show you? The GT7 gameplay I have on offer has been segmented into chapters in the play bar, sorted by car being driven and driver credit, so just zip right to them if you want. Anyway, enjoy.
There's a whole pack of them! I can hit it where it hurts.
I'm one of the lucky few. I've had a PlayStation VR2 in my mitts and on my melon for 7 days straight. I'm disoriented, I'm sweaty, and I have a detailed critique to dispense to you now. That said, virtual reality is unlike any other medium when it comes to reviews and reviewers. Motion sickness tolerances vary from person to person greatly. New adopters of VR have their hair blown back by mechanics that veterans would expect as standard. I hate to do a mini LinkedIn-like resume of where I am with VR personally, but it's really important to quantify. So let's teleport to the chase quickly. I have 3 other VR headsets in my possession, have been using them for years, and PSVR2 is still an impressive piece of kit to me. From an original PSVR owner's perspective, PSVR2 is mind-blowingly better. Despite the odd exclusive for that system that you may wish to revisit, that headset is obsolete now. From a MetaQuest 2 owner's perspective, PSVR2 is very impressive in terms of visuals, ease of use, and it gives Meta's love of exclusive titles a run for Zuckerberg's money. You need only look at Gran Turismo 7 and Horizon Call of the Mountain to confirm this. From a Valve Index owner's perspective, PSVR2 is slightly less impressive. Sony's second VR attempt keeps pace in most areas, exceeds in a few, but falls very short in the Index controller department. All of this should come as no surprise given the considerable difference in price and technology of both of these headsets. I mention the Valve Index here only to establish that I've seen things from one of the highest VR peaks available, and that perspective is useful. And now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I realise I've probably been speaking too long. Let's have the PSVR2 sell itself to you. The very first thing that blows my mind about the PSVR2 is how light it is when I pick it up and plonk it on my peanut. It's 40 grams lighter than the OG PSVR that feels better balanced around your head. Conversely, it's 57 grams heavier than my Meta Quest 2, but the balance on that thing was always heavily on my nose and cheeks. In short, PSVR2 is the comfiest VR headset I've ever worked with. You simply forget it's there. Fitting it properly can be done in seconds too. With a new user, you can simply pull to extend the strap, place it on, and then twist the knob on the back to laterally tighten. If you need to, a previously underneath button on the PSVR allows you to move the front section of the visor forward and back, independent of the strap. Lastly, a wheel on the visor's top left lets you change the IPD range, or horizontal spacing, of the lenses. It's easy peasy. Input-wise, the VR Sense controllers feel perfectly designed. They remind me a great deal of my Meta Touch controllers, though Sony's take doesn't feel as plasticky or cheap. Part of that is because they're a pip heavier at 168 grams and have fancier innards. For the record, both offer capacitive face buttons and capacitive analog sticks. However, Meta's middle finger trigger is trumped by PSVR2's capacitive grip trigger, and Sony has gone above and beyond the Touch's standard index trigger by making it a haptics-enabled capacitive trigger. More on that in a minute. Another thing to note, unlike my old PSVR, the silicon material located around the cheek area of the headset easily creates a complete blockout of light, a huge deal for immersion. I also love that the new cable is half the diameter and weight of what we were tethered to with the PSVR. It's a smidge longer at 4.5 meters too. Rare was the time when I even noticed it was there. Lastly, being able to slap one cable into the front of the console, not a full Broadway production of breakout units and extra cables, is bliss. This ease of use, along with an overall boost in comfort, makes the PSVR2 the most accessible pick-up and play headset this side of the lovely wirelessness of MetaQuest 2. Also, kudos to PlayStation for including a black and white camera that can be switched to via a forward-placed button. It doesn't give me headaches like the one on my MetaQuest 2. Likewise, using it to draw out a safe 2m by 2m room scale space is a breeze. When it came to testing software on this thing, in some senses I had no shortage of options. And in another sense of the term, I kind of did have some limitations to work around. I smashed through 20 launch titles, many of them games I'd clocked before on other headsets, which sure helped with my timeline. But the timing of this review was less than ideal for big name launch fodder like GT7 and Resi Village. Despite my protests, their updates simply weren't ready to test. That said, I played the crotch out of the Apex experience, Horizon Call of the Mountain. It's the game Sony's choosing to bundle with this hardware, a true first-party showcase that uses all of the PSVR2's hardware and features to their fullest extent. You could call it PlayStation's hope of a killer app, the rough approximation of what Half-Life Alyx was to Valve's Index. I'm going to pen a dedicated review for that game that will go into greater depth, but as it's inextricably linked to this piece of hardware now, I will use large excerpts from that review in this hardware appraisal. I'll steer clear of major plot spoilers because Horizon is a 7-hour experience. Twice that if you want to go see every path not travelled as you 100% your collectibles. Dropping into the world as Reyes, a Nick Offerman sounding Shadow Kaja, is an impressive experience. Your window into this world will feel all-encompassing too, especially if you're coming straight from PSVR or Quest 2's roughly 90 degrees of field of view. The PSVR 2 offers a more Valve Index-ish FOV of roughly 108 to 110 degrees. In layman's terms, that makes for some serious there-ness. Likewise, having 2000 by 2040 per eye resolution at 120Hz rockets PSVR 2 to the top of the heap in terms of VR visual fidelity. At a consumer grade price range at least. Obviously, that kicks the crap out of PSVR's 960 by 1080 offerings. Even better, I'm happy to say that Sony's fancy eye tracking tricks, which better render things that you're actually perving at, works seamlessly. Mind you, this tech does not solve some very distant mountain views that suffer from their fair share of blur. Beyond that acceptable shortcoming, everything within a reasonable distance looks great. The frame rate is buttery smooth, the Dinobots you face all move and react fluidly, and they each offer a real sense of scale and threatening presence. Vertigo sufferers may also have a rough time finishing an adventure that feels like it's 80% climbing. It's the best wall scrambler I've played since The Climber 2 on Quest 2. Now, before we talk controls, feedback, and finer gameplay mechanics, it has to be said, eye tracking is an undersung game changer in terms of world connection. Shifting your stance and having a chatty NPC follow you with their eyes really puts you in the scene. Reaching out to high-five them, only to watch them shift focus to your hand and recoil in alarm, man, that's crazy stuff. And creepy on your behalf. PSVR2 and Horizon Call of the Mountain will wow your eyeballs, but what about your other senses? As I said about the Sense controller earlier, it exceeds that of the MetaTouch controllers in almost all areas, but obviously falls well short of the 10-finger tracking wow factor of the Valve Index controllers. Mind you, one pays a kidney, possibly a testicle or an ovary, to own those things. I should get the bad news out of the way early though. The internal battery life of a Sense controller seems to be roughly 5-ish hours, which isn't amazing. Also, Horizon doesn't represent the best finger tracking the Sense controllers can deliver. I like to do comical gesturing when I play my VR games, something the MetaTouch controllers allow for, as they will reliably know and represent when you're index pointing, closed fisting, or giving a thumbs up. Horizon can do all that, plus the peace symbol, for some reason, but getting the Sense controller to reliably interpret those gestures took way more effort than I expected. Some of the time it would misread my intentions. Not a huge deal, as I've played 3 or 4 other third-party titles that offer touch controller levels of finger tracking sureness. But yeah, it's quite odd that Horizon is unpolished in this area, given that it's the flagship experience. In all other categories of movement tracking, the Sense controllers pass with flying colours. Handling your 2 projectile weapons, or a surprisingly wide variety of climbing implements, feels natural and effortless. More complex actions like switching and or crafting arrow types is one of those "I love doing this, but man, it'd be tedious in any other game" kind of things. Just unusually entertaining. And speaking of tricksy interactions, Horizon impresses with incidental objects that offer multi-point gripping, breakability, and surprisingly realistic physics interactions when used in conjunction with one another. The devs have even aped the much beloved musical instruments and free painting time waste objects that are lying about in games like Half-Life Alyx. Sometimes it's the little things that impress us the most. It also has to be said that the haptic triggers and the vibration in the headset are game changers for VR as well. The former is felt in thwacks from hammering climbing axes into stone, followed by a slight trigger tension just to let you know that you've got the angle of your swing correct and now have complete purchase on the mountain. Likewise, you don't even need to glance at your bow to know that it's fully drawn. Your fingertips have felt the string become taut. You really don't realise how much vibration can add to VR gaming until you replace something you think you already know, like Pistol Whip or Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy. This time around, when I played it, the percussive punch of a pistole and the pulse of a techno beat truly elevates the game. And for Star Wars, the meaty chug of a full auto blaster barrage just feels boss. Those additions are enough of a difference to make those third-party titles feel like they're definitive additions on PSVR2. And one last comment before we move on. The actual headset vibration is used far too sparingly for my tastes in Horizon. It's so barely there, I thought it was a marketing gimmick, until I played Res Infinite, which uses it as this amazing thumping techno beat on your face. That game sold me on it instantly. So yeah, developers, if you're out there listening, spare not my melon. Go hard with your head vibrations next time. day, there aren't a lot of bad things that I can say about PlayStation VR 2. Is it expensive? Yep. But for the asking price, and in the context of some seriously more expensive competitors, I think what it's delivering is decent bang for your buck. And obviously that bang is bolstered by it doing things on the haptic and eye tracking fronts that many others are not. This newcomer is also a mixed bag of blessings on the gaming front. Is it a shame that your PSVR library can't be played on this? Absolutely. However, free and moderately priced upgrade paths are available for many of the good ones. And let's not underestimate the pull of Alex level exclusives like Horizon and GT7, which, by all hands on accounts from contemporaries I trust, is one of the best VR racing sims on the grid. Incidentally, check the pinned comment of this vid in a few days for my updated thoughts on that game. My instincts aren't often wrong, but I guess we'll see. When it comes to pros, PSVR 2 is a huge leap over its predecessor in terms of graphical capability, comfort, one-to-one tracking, and plug it in, plonk it on ease of use. VR on PlayStation began as a shaky-footed what-if gamble for Sony. PlayStation VR 2 feels like an all-in commitment to market-competitive, Apex-level VRing. This is mighty expensive, but if you want to kiss the sky like few gamers can, I say take the leap and absolutely love where you're gonna land.
Chasing all roads safe on the sun. If we can fix that transmitter.